Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the AI Healthcare Podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Reed, and today we are joined with my friend, RJ Kedziora, who is the co founder, partner, solutions architect, business development, and chief people officer of Estenda Solutions. Great to have you on today, RJ.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
And what got you started in the AI healthcare space?
I think of my start as going back even further than that. I was very fortunate in the early days of computing and technology way back in the 80s that my parents bought me a personal computer. And I did play my fair share of games, but also was very intrigued at that early stage of what the computer could do, even back then. So when I went to college in the early 90s, it was fully with the intent of getting a PhD in artificial intelligence. So very early on, my thought process was like AI, AI, AI. Like I recognized even back then how it was making a difference in the world and what hopefully it was going to be capable even back in the 90s. Interestingly, as I got ready to graduate, I got a couple job offers and weighing, in more debt, more years of education versus, making a living. I went with making a living. But I always gravitated towards AI. And back then, it wasn't the Gen AI of today. It was very much different ways of looking at it. I did projects in use of genetic algorithms and how to solve, equations and stuff, which made it very interesting. And then as my career advanced through the years in consulting, I got into pharma and saw what that world was all about. And ultimately, AI in healthcare was how do I make a difference in the world? You know, you know, I didn't go the doctor or the medical route. I don't play one on TV these days, but talk to a lot of medical doctors, help them figure out how to develop solutions now. But my passion was always around the use of technology and AI in various forms through the years as to what was capable. In probably 2008, 10 kind of time frame, did a big project on rules algorithms based of medication recommendations for patients with diabetes. It was fascinating trying to figure that one out because I'm fortunate to work on a project with a bunch of endocrinologists and had patient profiles uh, and had a discussion around how to treat the patient. What was the next step to treat that patient? And we had information, from their blood glucose to their medications that they were on, other comorbid conditions. And if there was 10 trained clinicians in that room, there was probably 12 opinions on,
Mhm.
okay, what's the next step? How do we treat this patient? So it was definitely a challenge to how do you, capture those rules, that evidence, to create a system to help drive forward the recommendations. So we were able to do that back then, which was really exciting. But now today, particularly with the advent of Gen AI, there's so much more that's possible that I'm looking forward to. And but we also have to not forget AI is not just Gen AI. There are other uses, avenues, image analysis, image recognition that are coming into play, predictive analytics that come into play. So lots of use cases for AI in healthcare these days.
And you brought up an interesting point. So people were discussing AI in healthcare in the early 90s. What were kind of the conversations focused around, or what was the technology then?
It really, that's when I was just graduating college. So it's 30, I realized I just hit my 30th anniversary of college graduation. But it was along the same lines of today, honestly. It was, how can we improve our capabilities to handle information and data and make better decisions? How do we help the doctors, the nurses, other healthcare professionals do better? Is was And then how do we do that? How do we codify the knowledge base? That was a lot of the exploration of the time. Some projects way back then were just like, here's this massive series of if statements, essentially. It's boiling it down and making it really simple. But how do we code knowledge? And it's okay. Here's millions of if statements, essentially, kind of thing. And that those solutions ultimately just didn't work, didn't scale to achieve what we wanted to. But it was early experiments in those methodologies.
Great. And, that kind of bleeds into my next question nicely is what is the story behind Estenda Solutions?
We were fortunate. My co-founder Drew Lewis and I, Drew happened to know some folks at the Joslin Diabetes Center, one of the premier diabetes research care institutions. And we had a congressional grant for the development of a diabetes disease management solution for military healthcare, which was a really interesting challenge. So if you think back 20 years, EMRs were not everywhere. It was not commonplace, but the VA did have them. The Army, military, healthcare did have EMR systems. And then we also got to work with the Indian Health Services. So that's where we got our start, working with those institutions on how to improve diabetic patient care, patients who had diabetes. How can we improve their care? And 20 years ago, it was very much, there wasn't a lot of data available.
Mhm.
Finger sticks was the common method of understanding what was happening, in between those appointments, um, understanding behaviors between appointments. Even today, if you go to your provider, you're lucky if you have 10, 15 minutes with them. So much around what you do outside of that office visit for diabetes and other chronic conditions, as we expanded, the type of work that we've done over the years into other chronic conditions, other, general disease states, other types of algorithms, disease conditions. It's really about the data and understanding what happens outside of that office visit. So we're very fortunate with those early opportunities, and then just expanded that work. And today we still really focus on, when I think of that intersection of research and data and patient care side of things. We don't do anything with billing, but it's how do we develop new ways of data visualization, algorithms to make clinical recommendations, help, the healthcare practitioners and patients make better decisions about their health and wellness.
Mhm. And, you brought up a great point too as well. And it seems like it's a recurring theme in the field where there seems to be a miscommunication between the research versus the actual implementation of what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, as we develop solutions, we always, it's one thing for a bunch of people to sit in a room and be like, "Hey, we think this will work." You do need to try them out. So, we partner with other PhDs, medical professionals, but we also have PhDs on our staff to help drive those clinical trials and figure out how, does this work? If it's not, how can we tweak it? Or what can we learn from the clinical trial to improve the algorithm? But a big part of that is just what you said. It's like, okay, now we need to implement this into practice. And there's an off quoted number, I think it's 17, 18 years that it takes research to make it into routine clinical practice. So I'm hoping with the advent of AI is one of those things that can help speed up that adoption of what we're finding in research, and is relevant to help improve, patient care faster. Doctors are smart people, medical professionals, very smart people, but the pace of new knowledge coming into the industry, and just how treatment algorithms change year over year. If you look at the American Heart Association, the American Diabetes Association, they're putting out new algorithms, new ways of treating all the time. New drugs come to market. It's really difficult to keep up with all that information. AI can keep up with that. And how do we apply that information to the current situation?
Mm.
Current point right in time now, really with very strong oversight of the healthcare professionals. But even as we move forward, how does that change?
And, I had the opportunity to do some research on your website. And one of the things that really popped up to me was the kind of the case section portion. It was about the Lanai diabetes solution um, in Hawaii. And my question is, how was that particular case study? How has it been able to positively contribute to what Estenda is looking to accomplish in the future when it comes to diabetes treatment and care?
Yeah, working with Lanai came out of that initial work with the military healthcare that we were doing. over the years, we just continued partnerships with various community health centers, other health systems, and Lanai was one of those big advocates in the early stages of the use of remote technology. In that case, there was two things: remote blood pressure monitoring. So even on a very small island of Lanai in Hawaii, it was difficult to always get into the practice of the community health center to realize, okay, share that information with your provider. So that project was just that, of using community health workers and remote patient monitoring technology to understand, what was happening with the blood pressure outside of that office visit. Something called white coat syndrome. If you go into the doctor's office, there's a group of people that their heart rate is going to be higher. You get a little more anxious when you go to the doctor. And so, yeah, you really want to track that at home. Like, is there really an issue with high blood pressure? So we were able to make a positive impact in the world on that. Fortunately, we won the HIMSS organization. We got a HIMSS Davies Award for innovation back in 2017 related to that project. The second component related to that was a diabetic retinopathy surveillance program. We were running it there, but the bigger program is with the Indian Health Services. Here in the U.S. is responsible for the American Indian population. There's digital cameras at about 100 sites throughout the U.S., and we've been doing this for 20 years now in cooperation with the Joslin Diabetes Center. But diabetic retinopathy is the leading cause of preventable blindness. So if we can find it, we can make a difference. So at those sites throughout the country, people can come in to the community health center, wherever they receive care, get imaging, and make a difference if we find incidents of disease. And nowadays, even that, we're turning to AI. How do we make instead of people reading these images to look for incidents of diabetic retinopathy, it's like AI can do this. Some of the earliest AI approved algorithms were actually in diabetic retinopathy, but they were in a different class of cameras that we're using for this program. The early algorithms were very much focused on a very narrow field of view, a small portion of the retina or the back of your eye, where the cameras that we're using are ultra wide, so much broader perspective on how much of the area that you can see. So we've been working on developing new algorithms, along with partnering with industry to implement things that they've created to make a difference.
And kind of going back to that Lanai case study, before it even happened, was it kind of was it just like a lack of understanding of just general medical knowledge? Was it the medical professionals didn't have the resources to successfully treat those patients, or kind of what did you guys discover throughout that experience?
Mm-hmm. As a small community health center in Lanai, they had lots of challenges. They were very good and continue today to be very good at getting grant-based funding to help support their mission in helping out the population that they wanted to do. So yeah, the projects that we focused on were how to enable the existing providers to do more, to learn more about their patients, to better understand how to treat them. Even looking at things like social determinants of health, which is much more recent, newer concepts of ideas, but understanding if you don't have access to good nutritional food, you're more likely to have healthcare challenges because you're not eating well. So those were the projects and challenges that they had in Lanai. You think of Hawaii, oh my God, it's so gorgeous and it's beautiful and it's tropical. Yes, all those things are true, but they've moved away from the old style farming industry, self-sustainment kind of thing. So much food comes in from off island; it's imported now. So quality of food gets more challenging. Those ancestral ways of eating get lost over time as modernity comes into into reality and those struggles. So yeah, a lot of those projects were, how do we identify those challenges? How do we help them overcome those challenges? And yeah, it's about understanding. They were definitely, their heart was there. They were everything they could do to help the population.
And how would you like Estenda Solutions to contribute to the AI healthcare conversation that we're currently having right now?
In so many ways, so many more ways than I can do in a day-to-day life. It's been interesting as we recruit people to come work for us. There is this constant theme of working in healthcare. A lot, there's a greater sense of giving back, of making a difference. Your typical doctors, can see 15, 20 patients a day, and you're on the very individual basis. Very important work, very necessary work. But as we help companies develop solutions, we're making an impact in the greater world. So, with aspects to AI, how can we help these companies now implement these AI tools and techniques, pushing the boundaries, advancing what is possible? Gen AI obviously these days is the biggest thing that everybody is talking about, and how do we use those in healthcare for efficiency? And really, I think those are some of the first real case studies, uses that we're finding in healthcare. Note taking, right? Writing a better note, ambient listening is becoming a big thing. And you think about the ambient listening, it's not just translating voice one to one. An anecdotal incident I heard was, the patient talked about taking a shot of whiskey before bed because, their legs were a little restless, and it helped, settle them down, and, fall asleep faster, kind of thing. Well, the note that the AI technology recorded was not patient, takes, a shot of whiskey. It was like patient self-medicates, in those types of things. And even just in my own usage, I did, you see these surprising things that Gen AI becomes capable of. I did a webinar about how to use AI, Gen AI specifically, in product development. So it's very much, you have to interview your users, understand your users, empathy, understand their condition and what their journey is looking like. How does the provider provide better care? What can the patient do better in terms of communication? But you can use AI to help you figure that out. Load into it your requirements, what you're thinking, and ask it questions of, and what did I forget? What are the best practices, approaches for using this? I've been conducting user interviews for decades now, kind of thing. So, I think very good at doing it. But I had a recent situation where I needed to do a user interview of, PhD experts in olfactory sensing, smell testing, kind of thing. And we're creating an application in that area of trying to advance the science of smell testing. And plug that into ChatGPT, and it came out with 10 questions to ask, and prompt that conversation. Yeah, I tweaked them a little bit. You always got to read, what it's generating, kind of thing. But where that might have taken me a couple hours to really formulate, it boiled it down to half an hour of time to create a good set of questions. But in that, what was interesting in that webinar, the AI and in product management that I did, it's available on our YouTube channel if anyone wants to see. I came up with the idea of addressing the fear of peanut butter getting stuck to you or through your mouth. Like, okay, what strange thing can I sort of play with? And the response from the Gen AI was like, really? And it's like, we're detecting a note of sarcasm here. And that just caught me off guard. It was like, okay, these things, they're not thinking, but through their mechanisms, it's capable of quite a bit. It's interesting.
And on a personal level, how would you, RJ, like to contribute to the field of AI in healthcare?
It's along the same lines. I'm one of the co-founders of Estenda. So how can I, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, and there's various different capacities that I work in, digital health solution architect, chief people person, it's within the company. It's like, how do I enable everybody else to be able to make an impact, to be more efficient? AI is not going to replace software developers. AI is not going to replace doctors or nurses today, tomorrow, but people using it are going to make a difference. And then sort of the corollary is companies using AI are going to replace companies not. So, how do we responsibly use these tools and technologies to make a difference?
And what do you think Congress needs to know about AI in healthcare?
They need to embrace it and understand the possibilities, and not overlook it. I think is the biggest thing. Congress is always challenged by getting any legislation through, but this technology is moving really fast, faster than anything we've seen before, and that's just going to continue. So the more that we can address this, and I think it's more not necessarily like hard legislation, but guidance and things that can support industry in better, controlling it and overseeing it. One of the things the people as we record this, a couple folks at OpenAI released a statement kind of thing that says Open AI as a company is suppressing our ability to share knowledge and information around the safety and the risks associated with AI technology. So if Congress can strengthen like the whistleblower laws and things like that, or enable legislation to create groups, organizations to help provide oversight of that beyond the FDA. The FDA definitely has oversight as you get into the medical technology in the world kind of thing, but it goes beyond that, a much more broad societal impact perspective. What do these groups and organizations do? I think it's an opportunity for us to learn from the EU. They passed the AI Act fairly recently that takes a risk management approach to AI. It's something we do in our software development projects, through and through. It's like, okay, let's look at the risk. How is this going to, impact, patients, the providers, the users? How do we mitigate those risks? And that's what that AI Act was all about. It's like things that are, have a societal impact. Okay, we're not an unacceptable level of risk. You can't do that. But
Mhm.
if there's a high level of risk and it's going to benefit society, okay, we need to provide more oversight from this. So, yeah, being aware of what other countries countries are doing.
Mhm.
But I think it's not necessarily passing specific laws about AI. It's more how do you help enable the industry to better address these things as they change.
Mhm. Yeah, because it's, one of the jokes I like to tell people is like we can barely get spending bills through, and it's like a bill, something like AI. It's a tall order.
Yes, it absolutely is. And, it's unfortunately our government is very driven by, political interests and things like that. Those, I'm sure OpenAI and Google and all the other players in the space are talking to their Congress people like, hey, be cautious, don't do anything rash. But, we need to balance that equation out.
Mhm. And where can people find more about you, RJ?
LinkedIn, I'm there very often. RJ Kedziora, I can provide you the link, estenda.com. Very good way to get in touch with me these days. By the time this comes out, probably have completed a couple more webinars. We're trying to put out a lot of webinars on the use of Gen AI, one coming up, and software testing as well. How can you be more efficient? But yeah, constantly out there. Be at a bunch of conferences in the fall. LinkedIn is probably the best way.
Awesome. And be sure to subscribe to the AI Healthcare Report, which I release once a week. I'm also the host of the AI Healthcare Podcast. As you were watching this, I released episodes twice a month. And be sure to also subscribe to my new newsletter, the FDA Roundup, which just talks about the 5 cool things happening around the agency, and that's released monthly. This is Dylan Reed signing off. Thank you so much again, RJ.
Welcome.